respond over here. If not, I want to read something from Mike, just from the minutes. And again, I don't know if, I'm going on a fishing trip here somewhat, Mike, but I appreciate your comments, first of all. These came out of the discussion from the June 14th special meeting that the commission had. And this was right after you had discussed all of these things with the commission. You had a joint meeting back then to discuss all those. And the only thing that Mike pointed out, that being Mike Watson, it goes through a whole list. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but again, it's exactly as you suggested, that everything was in here, what you would like to bring back, kindergarten, the buildings, etc. And Mr. Watson noted that he is elated for a 5-0 vote, referring to the board vote to add the 13.95 mil. And that the district will again be able to the restoration process and be able to function when the commission leaves. He thinks this is a doable plan, noting that before programs are reinstated, the auditor of state will review the figures and the commission will have to approve them to ensure the finances are there. The board needs to pound the pavement to get the levy passed. That again, is just coming from the commission meeting. Ms. Hamburg noted that it was the board's intention that prior to reinstating programs, the intent was to restore with approval of the commission. So that's just a very small part of it. And, with my conversation with Mr. Watson, that was the main sticking point, I think, was that it was all one big package. There was nothing broke out, and nothing had been approved by the auditor of state, which again is the financial advisor to the commission. Other comments over here?
Well, if I could, first off, we had another combined meeting, and I said then, I don't like this configuration. We should be facing each other, so I just have to lean forward.
You can say that.
Mike, I appreciate your comments. And, the issues about how the community views the school district, the school administration, the board. That's been a major issue for the 15 years we've lived in. But I would say first, obviously there's an issue of, I think, my opinion, that an issue or problem or concern is the process and communication. Because when I left that joint meeting, I felt pretty good about things. But my understanding that I left is the primary resolution that the commission voted on was whether or not there'd be a 13.95 millage levy on or not. And in support of putting that number on, why are we going with that number rather than another number? These other things were discussed. But my recollection and understanding also was that it was clear, perhaps not clear enough, that these 4 items, and there were a couple of other ones that had been mentioned, were still, that was where we were going to go. They were going to be prioritized, but at the end of the day, before approval, before implementation, they still were subject to be approved. But there was no tacit wink, wink, we'll approve them now. It's, this is a good plan, follow this process, put the numbers together, get the levy passed, let's sit down and let's finalize it. Okay? So I thought that we were left with more to be done. In mid-October, I saw some of the campaign literature and I took issue with it. Because I didn't think the campaign literature properly reflected. I thought it was saying something that shouldn't quite be said, or in the way it was. Never. Now, all that aside, at our last meeting, at least from my perspective, not being the smartest bear in the woods, I felt like I was presented with a, all or nothing proposition. Either endorse this whole resolution as is, or deny it. I mean, there were a lot of factors in that resolution that I think are priorities. I thought, should be, contributed. But it was all, or followed. There was too many things lumped together. So again, it goes back to, it's a matter of process, it's a matter of communication. You know, I mean, I'm happy that the levy passed. It's great. I don't know why exactly. I'm not a statistician, but I did go back and look at the votes, and I looked at the history of the votes. And when we look at all the factors that were in front of the community before they voted in November, I just don't know. I mean, it's passed, so I don't think we can say it passed simply because of any one particular reason. It passed for a variety of reasons. I'm sure you and I'm sure every board member's had conversations with the community residents from August through Election Day about how they, whether you went to or not, how they felt about the levy, as did I. And I didn't take a scientific poll, but you know, there were, I'm sure that there were people that, when they read about or heard about the issue of opening buildings, that left a negative impression on them about voting for the levy. They still may have voted yes or no, but to me, we're still in a community that, for all intents and purposes, is evenly divided. And we're still in a community where we have to carefully and with due deliberation decide, you know, how we're going to make financial decisions. I'm personally, as a resident and as a father of students in the school, and as a member on this commission, the last thing I want to see is, and I'm not saying the board has this attitude, by the way. I'm not saying the board has this attitude, but the last thing I want to see, or the last perception that I want the community to have is, they passed the levy, they got the money, they're going to spend it. We're going to go right back to where we are. We're just going to immediately reconstruct the house of cards that all fell apart. I have a concern that the majority of the community is going to want to see a process, to see due deliberation. I think when we were given that resolution at our last meeting, we weren't quite at that point. So that's just me. But the other thing I think that there is a definite problem, something needs to be worked on, is the process and the communication.
Okay. Let me say this. I had a lot of people ask me, well, if we pass this levy, you're going to automatically start spending money again. I said, well, no, that's not actually true. If you vote for the levy and the levy passes, the 13.95 mils will be what we are spending. We're not going to be taking $2.4 million off from somewhere else and opening these buildings. If you vote for this levy, you are voting to open these buildings. That's what the money, that's what the levy's for. That's why we're not using extra money. We're not taking from the athletic department or the PI or the general fund, but that's what you're voting for. I even had a lady come up and ask me one day at Walgreens, said, well, now you've got to start spending money. I said, did you vote for the levy? She said, yes. I said, that's what you voted for. You should have known that. But again, what I'm saying is you know, we're not spending extra money. I can't get that across to the community strongly.
I don't think we're saying we're spending extra money. And also, I would just, and maybe this isn't the point you're raising at this point, but in my mind, I mean, again, it's a communication issue. I don't believe, as my vote was not a vote intended to say we're not opening the buildings. My vote was this plan that was in front of me at that commission meeting, and the explanation I had was not enough for me to say yes. Give me some more information. Answer some more questions that I have. Yeah, maybe I need to do a better job getting the questions to you to answer. And then, you know, I don't see, at least for me, again, maybe it's not a person.
Okay, Matt, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to follow on what Mr. Beeler said, which is, at the meeting last summer, it's been cited so many times. All right. I also did not view my comments at that time as a wholesale endorsement of the plan. There was no concrete plan with numbers put in front of us. There was a concept statement given to us. There was not a plan with details and funding and projections of future enrollment, housing growth, and everything else. I cannot, in my position, I'm a budget analyst for the state of Ohio and a member of this commission, I cannot prove a massive expenditure of dollars, be held accountable for a massive expenditure of dollars when I approved a concept plan. That's what that was to me. I did not sign off on a document saying that I'm going to go forward with everything that the board says going forward. Now, that being said, I want to also reiterate something Mr. Beeler said. My vote was not a flat-out no vote on what we saw at the last meeting. I would like to see more information. The Department of Education can provide, for example, live birth records for this entire state. Do we know for certain that this district is going to have a number of students to support reopening all of these buildings in a year, 2 years, 5 years? This levy is only valid for 5 years worth of funding. We have declining enrollment across the state. Are these buildings even necessary in 3 or 4 years? I would like to know that. For example, what does this district's projection for future residents look like? We're never going to see another building boom like we did in the early and mid part of the last decade. This district is not going to have massive increases in enrollment. That's not going to happen anywhere in this country for a very long time if it ever happens again. Will there be the growth there to support opening up these buildings? These buildings are expensive, they're old, they cost a lot of money to heat. And my question was not, and I mentioned this, I said, I don't know the geographics of the district that well, but is it necessary to open every one of these buildings? I'm not saying a flat-out no, but is there some other plan? Is that the absolute best plan for this district? So I want to make that clear. I'm not just saying wholesale no.
Good question. Mr. Power and then Mrs. Black.
I have to say that, in speaking on behalf of the administrative team, we are extremely, very, very frustrated. We came before the commission in January. We communicated our intent to present this 4-point plan and the detail associated with this. As we have progressed from last June, when we were directed prior to that to close Mainville, we provided the commission with cost projections on what the savings would be if we closed Mainville. The commission has had budget detail around what it takes to operate Mainville. Butlerville was closed prior, a couple of years prior. We are extremely frustrated, and I would fully concur that the communication process is completely broken from the commission to us, from us to them. I think we've identified some email issues, but we came here in January with asking for the commission. We communicated our intention to present a complete plan that was tied to the 4 points that we campaigned on. We would not, and I'm going to tell you, I would not have participated in a campaign that presented one thing and then causes us to be in the condition that we're now in, where we appear to have broken trust with what we have campaigned on. That is not anybody here who is in the school with kids, and so I guess I'm pretty frustrated about that. We had 4,400 kids when we started down this decline. I think it's safe to assume that over the next couple of years, we're going to be at 4,400 kids. We have no idea how many kids are coming back. We're at 3,800 now. I've got a junior high that's cram-packed. We'll do what we always do if we can't open buildings. We'll make it work. But this is an extremely frustrating situation for us who do not have staff and who we're getting, served from OMB. You got data for that? Where's the support coming from Columbus? You're here, you're supposed to be a resource, and part of my frustration is we're guessing at what you want, and then you tell us this is what you want. What staff should I use to do that? I mean, we're cut to the bone.
Do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Guess I'm not sure which one to address first. Let me start with saying that you did not receive any of the costs, what the association was with these 4 restorations. Back when we had our June meeting, you received a sheet that had the breakdown of the costs for each restoration, plus our 5-year forecast with those proposed restorations, with our repayment, and then also the 20% that we held back for our rainy day fund for any additional cuts that the state may have. So, one, I don't, appreciate when you say you weren't ever given any costs, because you were back in June. I have the papers here, they're the same ones that our board was given, that our treasurer Sean Bevan gave, and he gave them to everyone. So it does break down the cost for all 4 restorations. So, and then also, you sit here and say, why do we need to open these buildings? When we passed the bond issue in 2006 to build these 3 new buildings, and that master plan was to have the 3 neighborhood elementary schools, so that way it would facilitate that those buildings the new buildings could be used for their appropriate grade levels. Right now, we have the junior high and the high school. That's not appropriate. We have 5th through 7th in the junior high. Projected next year, we have 922 children in that building that's built for 800 students. So by opening these 2 other buildings, not only did it allow for growth at the elementary levels, it also allowed for growth in 5 through 7, or I should say 5 through 12. And we're really seeing the growth in grades 5 through 7 right now. Those kids need that room. Also, it's just very frustrating because yes, we know that we had to have the auditor of state's approval, but as Mr. Power said, 3 of the 4 commission members verbally, and I have what you said, I wrote those notes down, you verbally supported the levy millage plus those restorations. We would not have gone and campaigned for the levy for passage if we knew those restorations were going to take place. We said, community, we're going to do 1395 mills, and with that money, we're paying back our debt. We're serving these 4 restorations, plus we're holding some additional money back in case the state cuts our budget so we can maintain those restorations. So it's very frustrating to hear, say, well, we didn't have this or we didn't have that, when you did have all that information.
And another thing, people keep saying, well, you're going to spend, but you, the commission, said it wasn't a spending problem that got us into this trouble. It was a revenue problem. And so we passed the levy, and there we are. If even...
That's true, I said that at the very first meeting.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
And what I questioned, and I was sorry that I was out of town at your last meeting, but what I questioned was, why didn't you communicate, instead of just voting da-da-da-da, why didn't you communicate that, okay, we need, we're okay with this, but we need some more information. Let's talk. The communication between these 2 boards is awful. Part of it's our fault, but a lot of it's your fault. So.
Comments?
At the last meeting, my no vote was not a no plan. Okay, so I was and actually after we left the meeting and discussed and some conversation, I didn't feel like you, as the Board of Education, had the idea that we said no, your plan's not going to go. I asked Terry some questions on some of the financials of it because I'm still not comfortable, and I have a list of questions on later down here. I voted no because I was not comfortable with the forecast.
Did you
And
say that?
but yes, I
If you
did.
weren't comfortable with the forecast, why didn't you speak up?
Please, one at a time.
Yes, because I asked Terry, we had a conversation on it at the meeting, and going back and reviewing again, so I brought up more specific things that I had a question about whether or not the board had thought of several other things coming up, because I look at it as we have to check off on the $30-some million budget of taxpayers' money. And I'm not comfortable with the first proposal comes up, and if I have any questions to say, oh yeah, it's okay, let's just go spend $37 million. I want the community, the district, the board to be sure that in 5 years we're going to be sound, because I do not think the economic times today are what they were in June. We don't know what gas prices are going to be. We don't know what health care is going to be. We don't know what that's going to do to employers. And all of that factor, to me, I'm looking at, and I told Terry before, even though this is computer-generated forecast, I think now the parameters have changed. And I just want to be sure that the board knows at the end of 5 years, I'm not sure you're going to make it at the end of 5 years on what we have if we go back to full-fledged operations. So it's not a no-go. It's not that I don't want you to open those buildings, but I think, man, we've got a whole lot of financial parameters again that we have to address. And we can go on now or do them later, but that was my concern. And so it's not a, no, I'm not supporting what you're trying to do.
What I kind of hear so far, to summarize a little bit, is that the overall plan was voted down, but necessarily some of the components may still be okay to move forward with.
That's what I was going to
Okay, I'm sorry. Go
There were
ahead.
other parts to that plan, which was, to me.
Microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. There were other parts to that plan that concern me that directly affect our kids. Opening the buildings is not a benefit to any one of our students, in my opinion. It's a plan, the miscommunication, what Mr. Beeler said about him saying something about that, Lisa 11 campaign material, I have issues with that. If we knew that at the time, that's a problem. But I wasn't there, I didn't know. But my point is, are we going to half-day, everyday kindergarten? That benefits our kids. Are we bringing back specials? That benefits our children. That's what we need. And I got the impression when I left, and you know, because I emailed you guys, what did you vote no on? I'm not worried about the buildings. I mean, we will need those buildings. I know that we will, and we'll open them. But my concern right now, the specials and the kindergarten, are we able to tell our community that they have that?
And that's probably something that needs to be told now,
Yes. Yes.
because as we plan for next year. Go ahead.
Those are the things I want to talk about, but my recollection is that the majority of the discussion at the last commission meeting was about the buildings.
You're right.
It was about bricks
Yes,
and mortar.
you're right.
We didn't talk about kids.
I agree.
We didn't talk about programs. We didn't talk about staff. We didn't talk about how much does it cost to heat Butlerville compared to what does it cost to heat the intermediate. We talked about bricks and mortar. And so the whole focus got pulled away from the thing which back in June was listed as the top priority.
Would it be acceptable for both entities then to discuss those things? Let's talk about everyday kindergarten. Let's talk about the special staff and everything other than the buildings. Can we talk about that in a minute? But first, Mrs. Black has a
I
comment.
just wanted to say, you know, it's not, I know you guys saw the plan that Mr. Powers had presented, and in that plan, not only did it talk about the buildings, and I know people keep focusing on that, but that's not one of the 4 restorations. The other restorations included the kindergarten and the bringing back programs. And bringing back those programs at K through 4 also allows staffing to be able to bring back programs K through, or 5 through 12 that we've taken away. It frees up staff to allow those older children to have what was taken away from them as well. And in that master plan, that reconfiguration plan that Mr. Powers presented, he presented it at our board meeting, and I know he presented it at your meeting, it indicated that there was the staffing, the opening, or bringing back the kindergarten, not just the buildings, and also returning the specials. So if anybody had any questions, you guys could have pulled out and said, hey, we don't want to vote on the buildings yet, but let's look at the kindergarten. Let's look at returning specials.
Which is right where we're headed.
I mean, that wasn't done, and we can't wait until the end of April to hire staff for programming and for kindergarten. We have people registering. They don't know, are they coming every other day, every day?
And we're going to decide that. Mr. Hurst?
And Stephanie, just to follow up on what you said, and what you said, Cole, while our discussion did primarily relate to the openings of the buildings, I mean, the documentation that I received a week in advance did contain the full plan, and it, quite frankly, did address staffing and some other programming issues. So, in fairness to the administration, I mean, I was aware of that. I guess my take was, you know, we sort of had like it was either all or nothing, and the commission wasn't quite at the point to where they were ready to do it all. And quite frankly, the reason for that could be due to some communication issues that hopefully will now be resolved. But just a few of my own thoughts before we move on to anything else. You know, before the commission voted on the resolution last time, you know, I sort of voiced my opinion that I was, on the fence, for lack of a better term, like I might even sit on the fence. And again, I realize at the local board, you have to manage several different items. One, there's local politics, the academics, and you also have to worry about the finances. And, that's what you're here to do. And again, I think that the commission's role is to only worry about the finances. And I mentioned at the last meeting, I thought that the plan as presented, it was feasible, whether I agreed with it from any other standpoint, it was feasible. And, my comments would be that, based on that, I'd be willing to reconsider my vote on that plan as presented.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Randall, you have some